Okay, yeah. Naren. Also, guys, just one quick note before we start. Um, when you start typing in your chat window, look look for the drop down menu next to two. It says all panelists. Click on that and choose all panelists and attendees. This way everyone else in the webinar will also be able to see what you're saying. Otherwise, only I get to say it. I know it's a bug in Zoom. Yes, great. Thank you. That's a bug in Zoom. I feel like it should be uh, on all panelists and attendees by default. Okay, and before we start, I would recommend maybe grabbing a glass of water, and if you like coffee, maybe getting that and keeping it at hand. Today's webinar is slightly longer than our usual sessions. We will be most of our office hours and webinars will be about an hour long. Today is 90 minutes, but we have a lot to cover. So hang in there. Okay, great. I think it's time, and let's begin. And I see that you guys are joining from all over the world. Yeah, this is always a very exciting part of working with this course for me. Just interacting with people from so many different countries. Um, and I see that some of you have numbers instead of your name, and I'm guessing that's not your actual name. Um, and this goes to 09053. First of all, you might want to change your chat settings so that you're posting to the whole group using by clicking all on the all panelists drop down menu and select all panelists and attendees. I'm sorry, guys. These logistical issues are important, but we only have to deal with them once, and I'm sure all of you will remember next time. Okay, great. So to the people who have numbers for names right now, we will figure out a way to correct that and have your correct names displayed there. Program support, can we fix that? Maybe for next time.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I will also explain what is program support, but before that, let's dive in to our course. Um, So today's agenda um, is going to start with meeting the course faculty and the team, and then most importantly, meeting the rest of the students in the course. I would like to talk a little about the pedagogy of these of the emeritus courses and how they are different from some of the other courses that you might do online. Uh, After that, I would like to go through the syllabus quickly and maybe talk about grading and what are webinars, office hours. Um, some of you may have already checked out Canvas, um, but if not, we'll go over that too. And then we will begin our webinar on empathy. Great. So, any questions right now? Can everyone hear me clearly? Can everyone see the slides clearly? Okay, great. Thank you, Rami. Um, so, first of all, you guys might have heard of Professor Stephen Eppinger, um, and he is a faculty at the MIT Sloan School of Management. He teaches a bunch of courses. Most famously, he teaches the product design and development course here. Um, he has literally written the textbook on product design and development. And as a quick side note, this textbook was my introduction to product design many years ago. Yeah, so this is actually very personal to me as well, because this is how I got interested in product design. And I've had the privilege of working with uh, Professor Eppinger on multiple courses. I've assisted him on projects, and it's been a great journey. So I'm happy to be continuing this uh, process of working on his courses. Great. And for the team, for the emeritus team, we have Glenn Moore and Laura. They're not here with us today, but you might be interacting with them on future webinars or office hours. And then that's, of course, me. I live in Boston right now, so it's around 8 a.m. It's very cold, and you guys might have heard of the snowstorm. Actually, oh, before that, I must apologize that we were supposed to have this uh, webinar yesterday, but I was stuck in at the airport in Baltimore because I'd gone there for an event, and my flight was canceled, and I just did not have any way of coming back. So thank you for understanding and cooperating for moving this to today. Little background on me. Um, I am a mechanical engineer, and I graduated from the Integrated Design and Management program at MIT. Uh, Before coming here, I was in India, and I was running a company which worked with the applications of drones. We did that for a few years, and I decided I wanted to study more. and and now, after graduating from MIT, I design products for accessibility technology, especially for visually impaired students in high school. And so these are my core areas of interest right now, but I am interested in all things design and all things technology. So outside the course as well, I would be happy to talk about crazy ideas and um, and technology that you may discover somewhere. Great. Um, and a quick note: this is our super capable support team. You are going to be hearing from them periodically. Um, I think we have Varun with us today. Varun, are you here?
Yes. Hi,
Yes.
Shakti.
So usually their usually their cameras are not on. They are kind of like the silent overlords, and you will only hear their voices every now and then. Um, Great. So coming to you guys. So this is a general spread of uh, of countries. Actually, I'm not sure if this directly correlates with nationality. Um, and you can see that about 10% of our students come from um, countries which have fewer than 2% represented in the class. So this is a fairly diverse group. And we learned that all of you are watching this at different times in different time zones. So, and this diversity does not stop at just countries. This also goes into work experience. And you'll note that about 30% of the class has over 20 years of work experience. And this brings me to probably the most important point of, well, one of the most important points of today's webinar. You will be learning a lot through the lectures, through the office hours, and through Professor Eppinger's videos, but this is also an opportunity to learn from your classmates and people who have 20 and over 20, 25 years of experience in certain industries, and make sure you avail that opportunity, and you are able to create a network that can support you even after this course is over. Okay, great. Any questions so far? If you do have some questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat box. And do tell me if if I'm missing something. Great. So as for industries, so we have wow, this is very interesting. We usually don't have such a big group of people from banking and financial services, and it's great because often we've been talking about how banking and the financial sector is lagging behind in all the technological advances that we see around the world, how banking is still kind of this slow process where you have to go to a brick and mortar establishment to do simple things. And I know that's not entirely true. And we tend to be critical about things that we don't understand. So this is great on multiple fronts because this is an industry that really needs this kind of a course and this kind of a process. And this is also a great opportunity for everyone else to learn from such a big concentration of expertise. So I'm very excited for this course, and I hope we get to learn a lot from each other. Okay. And this was, so we had a bunch of questions that you guys answered, and I found one of them. Usually these are for our reference, but I wanted to share one of the questions that I saw in the responses. Overwhelmingly, most of you said that this course was to challenge yourself or to enhance your effectiveness. And that's incredible because often people, well, not in this course, but people usually sometimes go to school to get credential or maybe to move to a new job. And I like how so many of you are not only focused on getting credential, but actually want to challenge yourself. And this is a great course to challenge yourself. Believe me, this is going to be a lot of hard work, especially considering that most of you have either your own businesses or full-time jobs. So this is going to be challenging. And if at any point you feel that this is not challenging enough for you, please do reach out to me and we can fix that. Great. And before that, well, actually, no, it's a part of this. So have you guys explored Canvas yet? Hi, KM Mutter. I'm sorry, I don't know how to, is that your, I don't know how to say your name, but yes, I did see that the diagram showed banking twice. And I think I'm not sure why that happened, but thanks for pointing that out. Great. So if you have explored Canvas, you might have noticed that the videos by Professor Eppinger are actually pretty short. They are usually about 4 to 5 minutes in length and cover one distinct concept. And we move from one concept to the other, and they are usually interspersed with assignments or maybe quick exercises to promote sticky learning, or just to make sure that the concepts are um, easier to remember. And you can also access this from your mobile device. Actually, quick survey. How many of you are watching this on your mobile devices? So this will be a good, this is very interesting because I usually imagine people sitting at a desk and looking at a video. So because I do that, so, oh, this is interesting. Okay. Also, Wahid, you might want to change your chat settings from all panelists to all panelists and attendees. Okay, great. So we have a few people watching on mobile, but not that many. But that's great. So that should not affect your experience in any way. Great, thank you, Wahid. Um, so apart from these factors, another um, another aspect of these courses that make them different from other courses that you might encounter online is me. Is so I so and so that's why these courses are also called SPOCs, or small private online courses, as opposed to massive open online courses. And a good analogy for understanding my role and how I can help you is, imagine you're on a tour to some fantastic um, foreign land, and I just happen to have visited this place multiple times, and that's why I know the area. I know what are the highlights. I know how to navigate this um, route, and I will be able to guide you through this. And that is kind of my role. I'm your guide through this course. I might not know everything at all times. I am still learning, and that's a big reason for why I do these courses, is because I get to learn a lot every time. But rest assured, I will be able to answer close to all of your questions about the curriculum, and I would love to engage in more discussions about design and technology and the world in general, if when we have time. But we're going to try and stick to our curriculum as much as possible. Um, any questions before we move on to what is design thinking exactly? Great. So another quick note before we move on. This particular run of this course is also is actually, I was especially excited about this run um, because I was told that this is going to be a smaller cohort than usual. And usually I would have about uh, 70 to 80 people or even more. And it was very hard for me to conduct interactive exercises. And that's how I usually like to run these things, is I would like to give you access to the microphone and 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 have you speak to me like we're in a real classroom. And that's how I like to do this. And it's hard when we have so many people, because it gets messy and conversations are difficult to follow. But with a small class size like this one, I think we'll have a great time interacting with each other. And very often I will encourage you to take the mic and talk. To do that, you would be raising your hand. I think there should be a button to raise your hand. Um, near your chat window or in the options, and that will tell us that you are ready to speak. And program support will then proceed to give you microphone access. Can we uh, quickly try that maybe? Can one of you raise your hand, and program support, can you please give them access? We'll do a quick 15-second demonstration of how that works. And in the future, I would like to be doing this a lot more. And I do not want this to be a one-sided conversation where I am talking at you and you have to sit and listen to what I'm saying. That's, I don't think that's a very conducive environment for learning. Great. Has anyone tried to raise their hand? Okay. Anyway, we will keep doing that in the background. Okay, great. So program support, please pick one person at random and give them microphone access. Meanwhile, I think we have a question. What is the meaning of, oh, great, good timing. So I'm just going to call you K for now until we can talk and you can tell me how to pronounce your name. So KM here said, what is the meaning of DT? Does it mean following the behavior and mentality of a designer? That is a very good question. And the answer is largely yes. Well, no, actually, no. Answer is it depends. Um, DT design thinking. Um, well, actually, since we have the slides up, let's just go to that. So design thinking is a process. It's a, as you can see, it's a creative and systematic approach to problem solving by placing the user at the center of the experience. And that part is crucial, is that is placing the user at the center of the experience. And this definition has been evolving over time, and it is also evolving as we speak right now, because now several schools of thought think that we should not be um, calling the user a user, because uh, that that promotes a sort of thinking where you are building something for a nameless user, where while in reality this user is a human with different needs, different personalities, different preferences, and it's very difficult to put all of these things together under one umbrella of user. Great. So and design thinking is a process. It's a it's a systematic problem solving process that can be applied to any problem. Of course, there are limitations in how you define that problem, and that's something that we'll be learning along the way. And 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 that's critical. The part where you frame the problem, that dictates a lot of your process going forward. And there are some nuances on how you can frame this better, and and we will talk about that in the first assignment when that comes up. But in short, you don't want to be too focused when you define your problem, and you also don't want it to be too broad. So it's a balance, and it's a delicate balance that you will uh, that will not come with one assignment, or and I can also, most of you will not, actually, one course is not enough to become an expert at any part of this process. This will serve as your introduction to the design process, and over time, as you keep applying this to your work and to projects, you are going to learn more and more about how you can utilize these tools. Great. I think we have a few comments. Arvind had a point here. Yes, Arvind, exactly. So that we have a whole webinar dedicated to um, journey mapping and personas. So yeah, we're going to go into a lot more detail. um, so Cam had a question here. Why is it called DT? I am actually not sure why is it called DT. Uh, it's um, it's also called human-centered design. This particular course, emeritus course, is called design thinking. I guess that was just a choice. Usually, when I talk about it, I call it human-centered design, and and you will see me using these terms interchangeably throughout this course. So you can choose to call it human-centered design if you want. Great. Kim had another question. Will you compare DT with other innovation methods? Um, sure. What kind of innovation methods are you referring to? And yes, we can definitely have a discussion on that um, in one of the office hours, maybe. Great. Okay, so I think we have come. Oh, we have. Yeah. So, is anyone familiar with this Venn diagram here? And so, by the end of this course, I can assure you, you will be able to recite this methodology, the real win worth it idea in your sleep, because you are going to be uh, interacting with it and applying it over and over again. And just a quick snapshot of your course journey. The first in the first week, you will be posting your profile, submitting ideas, and joining a team. And once you join a team, you would have to choose an idea. And this is the part where you have to try and keep frame this problem um, in such a way that it facilitates your journey through this course. And the way you would do that is by making sure that you're focused on the problem and not on a solution, so that you are not restricting yourself to one particular solution, but instead you are focusing on what is the root cause of this problem. And you would have to go many layers deeper, and we are going to talk about all of those things in more detail. Great. And after that, we will talk about how to identify user needs and how to um, code these, encode these so that they can be used later, and how do you and some guidelines on writing these user needs so that um, the researcher is not introducing his or her or their own bias into uh, their data. Um, this is one of the most fun parts where we apply creativity and develop solutions. And this is the brainstorming part of the process. And this is where you learn how to effectively leverage the brainstorming methodology. And can actually, and and this is we have a module on the service experience where we will look at creating service cycle maps, and this will be, and we have a few exercises to try and to promote learning and make sure that this learning sticks. We have a financial section here, and for most of you financial people, this will probably be fairly elementary. I can assure you, not everyone feels that it's elementary, and very often I've had complaints from people who find it hard to understand an NPV analysis and think that this is one of the toughest modules in this course. But since you guys have been doing this for so long, I I would actually be I, I think this is a great opportunity for you to maybe even improve on this section and see how we can make the financial analysis even better. Uh, this is followed by one of the most important modules um, of this course, considering the current climate, and that's designing for environment and how you can design products so that they are good for the users, but also good for the environment. Followed by a capstone project where you will be working with your team um, on developing an idea into one solution. Great. And then we have a final presentation and wrap up. So I'm just going to drink water for a second. Any questions up until now? Kim, I'm sorry, I don't think I've heard of Treebox or Framestorming. So maybe you could tell us about these in one of the office hours. That would be great. Okay. Program support, were we able to get someone on, give somebody microphone access?
Sure, we'll try with Kishore and Ricardo.
Okay, yeah, just any one person would be fine.
Kishore, you can speak now.
Okay. Hi, Kishore, can you hear me?
You need to unmute your mic.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, Kishore.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great over here. Yeah, it's I've been gone through the couple of videos, and almost all the videos, whatever have been assigned to us, it's been a fantastic material, course material what we have.
Okay, but it's a little hard to hear you. I think there's some noise, but it's great
Yeah,
to have you
I'm
in the
on
course.
move actually.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I'm
that's
hearing
totally
you completely. Yeah, clear.
okay. That's great. That's great. Okay. Okay, great, Kishore. So this is just a quick demonstration of.
But so fantastic.
Okay, great. Thanks. This is a quick demonstration of how I like to run things. I like to invite people and have them speak to me either face to face. If you have access to your camera, please do switch on your video. And if not, the voice is also fine. Thanks a lot for joining us, Kishore. You could mute your mic now. Yeah, great. Okay. And so this is the same real win worth it Venn diagram, where just in different words this time, and you will also be seeing this very often. So there are three parts which make a really good product. One part is people, one part is business, and the third part is technical. And we will go into detail in all of these. So I am not going to spend a lot of time on this diagram or this idea right now. And we have I have a slide on grading, but this is also, I feel something that we can discuss in case you guys have any questions. And actually, I think for this course, I don't think we have points for this one. And has anyone tried Canvas and encountered any problems with it? Arvind, good question. The final presentations are going to be live. Yes, and you will all be submitting uh, a slide deck, and we will be choosing from the slides um, uh, the some of the. Oh yeah, so it's a good question. Thank you for bringing me to that. So the criteria for the final presentations is um, is is not the best idea or the best solution. That's not necessarily what we're looking for, because that's, well, first of all, that's something that is very hard to measure, especially when all of these are just in the concept stage. What we are looking for to identify good final projects um, is a good application of the process. If you've learned the process, and if you've been meticulous about applying the things that you've learned, and you've gone through all the steps of the process, um, you are very likely to come out with a good solution and a good final presentation. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for meticulous application of this process, because after all, that's why you're here. And a quick note on that: often you will be tempted to paraphrase and use your own words to describe ideas. And I completely support that. But I would also encourage trying to stick to the vocabulary in the course. And that's not because using your own words is not as good, or um, not as or use doing that does not convey the same idea. It's that you're here to learn this vocabulary as well. So, and this is a good way of promoting that learning without actually putting in that much effort. So try to use the vocabulary that we use in this course, even if you can think of multiple other ways of saying the same thing. Okay, great. Any questions? Okay, so we are going to take a quick break, and we will start in a couple of minutes. So I would encourage you to get up, stand a little bit, maybe get some water or coffee, and we will meet again in 3 or 4 minutes. Great. I will be right back. Welcome back. I hope all of you are still here and we are ready to start our webinar for today. Before that, any burning questions that you would like me to address before I start this webinar? Okay, great. So quick note of caution before we start. I include a lot of material in my slides, which I know. So I have a core of what I want to cover, and then I have a lot of peripheral material, which I cover if we have time. And the timing for these is hard to predict because I like to make them as interactive as possible. So I can assure you that I will always cover the core, but I might skip a few slides every now and then. Do not be alarmed. It is by design. So I do have a lot of skill. I do tend to skip the peripheral sometimes if I think we're running slow. Okay, great. So let's start. So empathy, right? So before we dive into empathy, or actually this is part of empathy, and this is me building empathy with you guys. So can you tell me a little about your background? Are you what are you from products, from services? Great. Software. Okay. Great. Okay, so we have a concentration of services and software. Interesting. Okay, great. So next quick question. What kind of project are you considering? Is it going to be a physical product, service? Is it going to be a mobile app? Or is it going to be something else entirely? And of course, this is, okay, I will wait for you to answer. Okay. Okay, well, to be honest, this was a trick question. And I think this is this attribute of your solution of or your project is going to be defined by the process. It's kind of hard to know right now, especially even before you've decided what kind of problem that you are trying to address, and what is the exact problem that you are trying to address. And before you know that, it's very hard to decide whether you want to build a service or if you want to build a app or a product. So I would like you to throw this idea out of the window right now. I mean, you might be very comfortable with the service, you might be very comfortable with software, and you might not be comfortable with physical products, or it might be the other way around. And especially, I think in today's world, what we see often is these things do not exist in isolation. Um, we're no longer in a world where software runs on computers only and products are just dumb products that sit in one place. All of that is changing, and now And now we have a web of things which have physical products, which have software, which have mobile apps, and an entire service. A very good example. I was in DC um, this last weekend, and we were walking around the National Mall. That's the place with the Washington Monument and the Capitol Hill. And it's that place is huge, even though everything is nearby. That in that area in itself is huge. And we were using one of those scooters, the electric scooters, and I'm sure many of you must have seen them in your cities. And um, those scooters are tremendous fun, but they're also an example of how you have a physical product which is connected to a mobile app which is on your phone, and it's connected to payment services also on your phone, and that is also connected to a backend app which which employs people to charge these scooters and reallocate them. So it's a very very vast network of services that are running together, services, products, software that are running together to create this one offering. So the idea that you want to create only an app or only a product is, I would say, outdated now. And I would like you to start thinking about um, all of these things as interconnected. That and that is and whether you're making an app or a product or a combination of these will be decided by your problem, and you will discover the best way forward um, through this process. Great. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay. So this is a snapshot from Professor Eppinger's book, and the book goes into a lot of detail, starting from um, planning, concept development, and goes all the way up to production ramp up. So this course is actually a very small part of the whole product development process, and it's only the concept development. And it's, some would say, one of the most crucial parts, because if you have a great product and an idea which is backed by financial data and user research, often the product builds itself, because so many people see value in it that it starts a cascading effect, and that helps everyone get on board. So uh, as you may see, this uh, even after this course, we are still only covering a very small part of product development. So always keep in mind that when you actually go out to build this, you would need experts in each of these areas. But you can still build expertise in concept development and go out with a great idea. Also, some of you may have noticed these arrows, these dotted arrows that are going backwards. Does anyone have any guesses on why we have these arrows and why are they going backwards? Exactly, Ricardo. So that's a key idea in in the design process. Is all of this is iterative, and you're never actually done, and you can always perform these processes again, and you will get new information. And throughout this whole process, you will be building hypotheses, and based on these hypotheses, you will be conducting some tests, you will be conducting user research and looking for answers. and you can always go back and test whether your assertions were correct. And if you find otherwise, you might have to go back and test another hypothesis. And that is what makes this process great, that you are always learning, and um, it is an infinitely applicable uh, uh, process. Great. So some of you may have also seen different diagrams for product development. One of these is this one, which also which is a highly simplified part of or compared to the last diagram. This one is uh, simplified, but you will notice that this also has the uh, iteration aspect. So that is a key idea, and I strongly recommend keeping that in mind every time you go through this process. And even during this course, we will be talking about how you can always iterate, um, and you're never done. So uh, that's critical. Just remember that no product and no design is ever complete. It's it can be the optimum design at that point, but you will continue to learn more and more. Great. Another, has anyone seen this particular diagram before? And can you tell me what divergent and convergent mean in this case? Okay, well, so this is something that you will experience in this course, where you will, and this will not be stated explicitly in the modules, but to the more astute, this would be apparent once you're going through the process. You will be experiencing two types of thinking. One would be where you're divergent. One example is brainstorming, where you are starting from one point and going in different directions and trying many different ideas, and and then testing these ideas in prototyping, and then you would be converging onto one idea. And and this is we will not be telling you when you're diverging or converging, but you will have this feeling. And sometimes you might feel very uncertain because your process is in its divergent phase, and you will feel like um, you lack direction. And that is, again, by design. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable with some uncertainty. And you are likely to feel that. But remember, if you stick to your team and stick to the process, you will come out on top. Great. Empathy. Well, I already have this answer on the slides, but does anyone feel that the definition of empathy is different from the one I have here? Or, well, if not, can you tell me why we're talking about empathy? Why is that important? Because we are, for example, we are building products, and if you're building a mobile app, do you need to care about empathy? I mean, that's not a hospital. And why would you care about empathy at all? If you're building a software that facilitates transactions between people, why would you care about empathy? Exactly. Spot on, Ricardo. That's right. Right. So it's since we aren't designing these for ourselves, and other people other than us are going to be using the product that we designed. Um, how do we know that? How do we understand the needs of these people, and how do we understand what they want? And empathy is going to be your friend in that process, and it's very hard. I think something that we often forget is um, how varied, unique, and deep other people are. I'm actually reading a book right now called Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell, and it is an incredible book. It is a little dark, and it is um, and it has some examples that may not be uh, very light, but it is an incredible book in so many ways. And I think I'm only part way through it, and it has already started changing um, my view of the world, especially the idea that even people you meet, strangers that you meet, are as deep and as nuanced as ourselves. And it sounds like common sense, but I realized that that is not something that I always had in my mind. And just keeping that small idea in mind has greatly impacted my interactions. And I think in one of the office hours, uh, if you guys want, we could go deeper into that discussion. Meanwhile, I highly recommend reading that book. And wow, that book is also a great example on um, empathy and how Malcolm Gladwell really understands his audience, and he knows how the people who read his books, his readers, and the current demographic of readers. So this is a book that was designed to be an audiobook and then converted to a text version. And I usually prefer textbooks, but I bought both in this case because the audiobook has so much more content, and has real recordings of people, and it's great. So I recommend going out and checking that out. Yeah, the name of the book is Talking to Strangers. I will put it in the slides when I send them out. And yeah, great. Talking to Strangers. Thank you, Hayden. Um, KM had a question. Yes, how to empathize. I'm guessing you said, yeah, empathize when we design for animals. That's a very good question. And actually, it's humans are animals too. And you will learn over time that talking to people is a very small part of not is just one aspect of the way you learn about your users, and there are so many other ways where how you can perform this research. A lot of it is an observation and talking to experts. So specifically for this, I think observing animals and maybe talking to experts who can help you uh, generate that empathy would help. And as we go through this process, you will realize that it's not going to be that different. Yeah, imagine designing something for someone who doesn't speak your language. Okay, so can anyone give me some what do you think are um, aspects, qualities of good designers? And I know that you haven't taken this course before, but I would like to, exactly, Wahid, nice. Any other guesses? Yes. Yep. Great. And as you guys will, I hope you will realize this over the rest of this course, that these are all skills that that you can develop, and nobody is born with with being observant, and maybe there are some aspects of your environment that turned you into a more observant person, but these are skills that can be built over time. And I hope you will leave this course feeling more observant and feeling that you are a better listener. Great. So these are, yes, so these are skills that you would be developing through this process. And this process also um, gives you a framework for being more observant, for being more creative. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, because how can you be working within a frame to be thinking outside the box, or which I know sounds like a cliche now, but we will learn these things during the course of during the rest of this course. Okay. Another aspect that separates good designers is immersing themselves into a problem, and and how uh, and how they observe. And observation is not merely looking at things, it's observing with all your senses. And this would this again sounds quite obvious, that why wouldn't you be observing with all your senses, but you will learn actually during the course of this short webinar on empathy that people don't always work that way. Great. Another thing that separates good designers is putting aside their own assumptions. And that aspect is key, because that is something that I feel is the most novel feature here, and the one that probably takes the most training, because we do not realize when we introduce our own bias into research, and which is what makes identifying this so hard, because you could be feeling that you are being completely unbiased and still introducing bias just by the way you take notes. So we will be going through a set of guidelines and practicing writing need statements, so that you write them in such a way that you separate your bias from pure fact. Great. So good designers immerse themselves into the experience of the user, they observe using all senses, and they engage with the user. And these are all ways to build empathy. And we are going to go over a couple of examples of different ways you can you can build empathy. So I had a few quotes here from different leaders in the industry who also believe in empathy, but I will go over them very quickly. This is part of the this is the peripheral part of my slides, as I said earlier. This is Tim Brown from IDEO, and you can, I think, read these quotes maybe later when I send you these slides. Right, so similarly, Bill Gates also feels that way, even though Bill Gates is not someone we think of as a designer. So there are a bunch of design empathy approaches, and a quick Google search will lead you to hundreds of different ways. And I have also included some resources in these slides, which will lead you to a handbook with all of these. And I don't, I would not want to force you to use one or the other, and because these will differ by situation, and you will end up using maybe one, two, or you might end up creating your own process or own framework altogether. So we are going to discuss a couple of examples here for each of these frameworks. Okay, any questions before that? Okay, great. So 5 whys. So has anyone heard of OXO Good Grips? Or has anyone seen this peeler? Or do you know why this might be up on my slides right now? Has anyone heard of the company OXO? Okay, great. Arvind, can you tell us what you know about OXO, or how did you end up seeing them? Okay, well, so this article does a very good job of illustrating the story accurately. I am going to paraphrase and in the interest of time. So the founder of OXO was in France with his wife, and he just retired from his earlier venture, and he was going crazy with retirement, and he didn't actually want to retire. Yes, Arvind, that's spot on. They do make amazing kitchen equipment, and I will be using some of their examples often, and you will be hearing about OXO. So after the presentation, if you want, please go online and check out the catalog, and you will find some very novel and exciting products. I actually have this peeler at home. So the story goes that him and his wife were at home, and his wife was upset. And the background here is that his wife had arthritis, and they were sitting at the table, and she seemed unusually upset. And he asked her, "Why are you upset?" And she just seemed uncomfortable at the time. The next question was, "Why are you uncomfortable?" Any guesses on where this is going? She was uncomfortable because her hand was hurting. And she just seemed upset at the time. There was no, when she was talking about it, there was no correlation from her being upset to this new peeler. So he just kept probing and trying to find the root cause of what is making her upset. So her hand was hurting. So why because she just thought that this is because she has arthritis, and she just assumed that she has arthritis, and so her hand is going to hurt whenever she uses a peeler. And so the final question was, why was this tool hard to use with arthritis? And that's because the peelers that we usually had really small handles and really thin handles, so they were hard to hold, and they would need a lot of force in trying to orient them properly. And this led to a whole process of trying out different peelers. You might notice that all of these peelers um, have really small handles, which are not very conducive for people with arthritis. And so the team went through a process of trying to identify different handles, and they tested hundreds of different prototypes to try and come up with a design that works for people with arthritis. And they kept testing with his wife and other people with arthritis, and they learned that um, the design that worked the best for people with arthritis also worked really well for people without arthritis, because it made the peeler so much easier to hold. And this is also an idea that you will encounter often, where by focusing on the needs of one user group, you end up making a product that is better for everyone. And that school of thought is usually called universal design. And this is an idea that you will encounter very often. So by making a product that was initially designed to suit just one person or one small demographic, actually ended up in creating a better product for the world. Great, so I have another example. This is from GE Healthcare, the GE Healthcare division. And this project was led by Doug Dietz. And he has a TEDx talk, and I highly encourage you to check out that video after this webinar. And so you saw the five whys methodology. So this is another way, another framework for building empathy and making sure that you realize, or making sure that you record your experience and understand what the user is trying to say. Great. So many of you may have seen an MRI machine or gone to an MRI room. And if you have, can you recall that experience? Has anyone here actually been in an MRI machine? Exactly, that's spot on, Cam. Very bad. Can you tell me why it was very bad? Claustrophobic. Noisy? Interesting. Why was it? So I understand claustrophobia. Scary. Why was it scary? What did you think would happen? I see. Right. Yeah. Yes, I need to build empathy. Right. So that brings me to our next point. So imagine we as adults feel so scared and claustrophobic, and it was a frightening experience for us. Imagine how it might be for children. And the dangerous part is that if the child is not sitting or not staying still, then this procedure has to be done again and again. And it's just a reinforcing loop of problems. So the GE team realized that this is a problem, and this is something that they went out to fix. They set out to fix, and you may realize that, but you felt that you were scared, but the people who designed the MRI did not, or this was not part of their agenda, because these are people who developed a machine that can see inside your body without opening. So this is an incredible feat of engineering, and and stopping there is actually not a bad place, because you've accomplished something huge. So this is an extra step that is not always taken by the people who are making incredible products as well. So they were surprised to realize that she was very scared, and she's a cancer patient, right? So it's her life is already very tightly managed, and within this tightly managed life, she had to go to this MRI, which was frightening. And as you guys said, it was frightening for adults. Imagine what it must be like for children. So what did they mean? Or what did they, or what they wondered what this meant? And they framed this problem considering the things that they know and the things that they inferred, that is there a way we can make this experience better and not as scary for children? Can any of you guess what they might have done to make this less scary? Yeah, that's a good guess. Any other guesses? I think having a screen inside might still be complicated because it might stop the radiation from reaching the people. But yeah, absolutely, that is something. Right, that is something that could be done. That is a really good idea. Yeah, great. So you guys are all, you're all on track. So you're actually very, so do you notice how we started with this, and these ideas just came to you once we framed this this situation as in this way, where going to this idea wasn't as big a leap. So this is one of the examples of what they did. They created a spaceship module, which feels like you're going into a spaceship. So they also had versions where you were in a forest, and the sounds were also replaced with sounds from a forest and or sounds from a spaceship, or from a actual ship. Right, sure, but I guess I wonder if they were worried uh, about publicizing their MRIs. But yes, that would be one way. That hospital, of course, would be preferred by parents then. Right. So isn't that, so the key takeaway here is how framing this, how identifying that problem. Actually, we didn't have to identify that problem, since we saw that many of you already knew what the experience is, or what that experience is like in an MRI. And making this leap just from knowing that experience wasn't enough, but framing it in that specific, in that way, made the sleep so much easier, right? So that's what I want you to take away from this example, that it's not uh, making this leap, it becomes a lot easier once you organize the information you have. Great. So I think we have time for one more example, and this is one of this one It's one of my favorite ones. And this one is about highly qualified and extremely people who are considered extremely smart. Um, and so this was with the Bressler group, and the problem that they were trying to solve was surgeons would keep getting cuts when they were during surgery, and this would happen while they were passing the scalpel or during other processes, other procedures. And the team met the doctors and asked them to demonstrate how would they pass the scalpel during a procedure. So as you can imagine, these are of course highly trained individuals. So they had a procedure. The scalpel would be turned a certain way and passed with one hand every time to the other, and it was smooth, and it was very hard to see how anyone would get cut when you have so much practice. Um, and so the team was of course they didn't stop there. They didn't stop their research there because it seemed like people would never get cut in this process. But they extended their research and observed the doctors during a surgery and also took videos. And what they learned there is that how people act under pressure is very different from how they're acting when they are talking to you about that problem. And very often the way that scalpels were handed over was very different from how they would do it during the interview. And this is and do you think why do you think the doctors do you think the doctors were trying to lie? Well, of course not. They, it's just that they also did not notice this. They also did not realize that they were doing this because they were so engrossed in their process. And this gave birth to a new scalpel, which prevents these kind of cuts and has a safety sheath on top that protects the blade and keeps the uh, stops um, stop and that stopped the number of cuts, reduced the number of cuts that were happening due to mishandling. Great. Okay, so I usually have another exercise here, but we are going to, I think we are close to the end of this. And so one final another framework that I want to discuss, and don't worry about that, the last example, we will discuss that maybe in an upcoming office hour. So one of the ways of organizing your information is an empathy map. And I'm not going to go into too much detail right now because you can look this up in the resources that I will be sending. Plus, we will also discuss this again. Um, so, so don't worry about it too much. But organizing this information around your around the human again helps you to make that leap, as we saw in the last example. So collecting your information is not enough. Organizing it is just as important. Great. So, so before I end, do you have any questions? So we are coming close to the end of our webinar today. Are there any burning questions that you would like me to address before we go into, before we sign off for today? Great, thank you, Kim. Any questions? And remember, these sessions are meant to be interactive. The whole point of doing this live is that you can ask questions and that we talk to each other. The webinar, yes, the webinar is definitely recorded and you can access this anytime. You can go to Canvas and look at this video again. But the whole point of doing this live is that you can ask questions and we can talk to each other. So please try to interact as much as possible. Great, thank you, Ricardo. Great. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I will sign off for today and we will meet again next week. Great. Okay, see you guys. And thank you for being a great audience. And I know we did not interact as much this time, but next time we are going to have more and more exercises. Great. See you next time.